Hello guys and welcome back to the live watch along here with DNF1. We are in Azerbaijan for this weekend's Grand Prix. As always, I am your host Adam Burns, and joining me this weekend for the live watch along, just rushing in at the very last moment opportunistically, we have Liam from Liam Talks Motorsport. Liam, first of all, thanks for coming on the show, and how are you doing?
I'm very good, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks very much for asking. And guys, I hope you are enjoying your weekend so far and looking forward to qualifying. Just as a quick note, qualifying has been delayed by 15 minutes, and this was owing to a crash in the earlier F2 sprint race where they had to repair the barriers on the outside of turn 1, which caused a delay to free practice. And normally the regulations regarding free practice and qualifying is that there's a 2-hour gap between free practice free and qualifying. So that's why we've got the delay. So qualifying will be starting around 3:15 UK time. Of course, as always, guys, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to like the video and consider subscribing and help us get to 1,000 subscribers as well. So, Liam, of course, a lot of action going on this season in the 2022 Championship, a battle between Ferrari and Red Bull brewing from week after week after week. Right now, it seems Red Bull have the advantage, and based on what we saw from free practice so far this weekend, it's fair to say that both teams are going to be very close once again.
Yeah, it's very close between the two. I mean, Perez topped FP3, of course. Ferraris look slightly slower. They're porpoising a lot more down the main straight than Red Bull. In fact, they have similar level of porpoising as Mercedes. However, unlike the Mercedes, they can gather pace. I've put my predictions that Leclerc will get pole. I'm not sure if that's going to happen now, but I think that over one lap, Leclerc's the best driver on the grid. I think that Verstappen and Perez will be next. I think Verstappen would have topped FP3 if he'd managed to get his last run in. And I think that would have shown Red Bull's pace because they would have finished 1-2. But I think the Red Bull are looking stronger than Ferrari, but over one lap, I think Leclerc is the better driver out the four.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of goes this weekend, because Red Bull obviously have that amazing pace down the straights. Ferrari, of course, running the much skinnier rear wing that they originally brought to Miami but ultimately never used and decided to use this weekend. And so far, that's actually proven to be quite useful down the straight. So that could be quite, not necessarily an equalizer, but certainly makes it a lot easier to compete with Red Bull in that regard. So qualifying possibly could be quite critical, although the race pace, again, from both sides, it seems to be very close. Liam, in your opinion, where do you think, not necessarily in qualifying, but where do you think this race will be won and lost between the two teams? Because right now it seems to be Red Bull or Ferrari at the moment.
100% strategy, because as we've seen at Baku in the past, well, since it started, in fact, since we started going to Baku, that the rate that it's well known for safety cars. I mean, and also many collisions as well. I mean, we've had some shock twists over the years. We've had Daniel Riccardo winning from 10th on the grid, Valtteri Bottas getting a puncture while leading, Sergio Perez winning for Red Bull when it looked as though Max Verstappen was cruising to victory. And all these things have happened because of the nature of the circuit and because of how strategies come into it. And I think that will be where the race is won or lost for Ferrari or Red Bull, or maybe even an outside party like an AlphaTauri, or maybe even an Aston Martin or an Alpine. So I think it will be strategy and that will come down to it.
It almost feels inevitable that addressing the issue of a safety car is going to come into play at this weekend's Grand Prix. And we have so many, there always seems to be safety cars in Baku. So it could be quite important for teams to be on the right tyres at the right time. And we saw last season how tyres were quite important. Obviously, those issues for Verstappen and Lance Stroll. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy that followed from that race over whether the teams ran lower tyre pressures or if the tyres were too worn. Or I know Pirelli as well went with a compound softer than they'd originally anticipated and were a little bit more... well, they weren't very conservative, I should say. Obviously, that's going to change this season. So it will be quite interesting to see which teams go more aggressive on strategy this weekend and which ones might hold something back in the chance that we may get a safety car.
Yeah, and of course that race was very interesting. In last year's qualifying, there was 5 red flags. So maybe that could have an impact on qualifying because of the amount of red flags there were. I mean, I think Max Verstappen would have got pole last year if there wasn't a red flag at the end, because he was on a really good lap, if I recall. And yeah, the nature of the circuit means there's almost definitely going to be a safety car. Of course, yeah, we won't have the same problem that we did last year, but the chances are there will probably be as many retirements and as many car problems as there was last year. So it will obviously make a difference because those crashes were very, very dangerous. So the fact that we're not going to have that this year is going to be good. I mean, hopefully, let's pray we have a safe qualifying, a safe race, and that we have an entertaining one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the threat of crashing into the barriers, especially in qualifying as the drivers are really pushing to the max that they possibly can, it's the nature of a street circuit. And it's one of the things that we love about street circuits in Formula One. Not necessarily the element of danger, but the element of risk of obviously pushing too hard. And obviously the result of doing that, if you get a little bit too greedy or snatch a brake or even lock your tyres, will be seeing your car go into one of the escape areas or even worse, into the barrier and ruining your qualifying session and potentially risking ruining someone else's as well, as you pointed out from last year, Liam. Just looking through the chat. Haven't had too much interaction yet, guys. If you are in there, say hi and let us know your thoughts and your predictions for qualifying. Seeing Mark Smith in there. Mark, hi. How are you doing, mate? Hope you're doing well. And yeah, certainly a lot of sport going on this weekend. Of course, we've got the 24-hour of Le Mans just starting, I believe, as I speak as well. So sort of got a little eye on that as well. For anyone who's interested in watching that, of course, you can check that out after qualifying is over. There's 23 more hours or so to watch after that one if you are thinking of watching that one later on. Just looking at the predictions. So obviously, Liam, you've given us yours. I'm going to read out the DNF1 ones that you can see on screen. And I've gone with a Red Bull front row. I've got a funny feeling that the straight line speed of the Red Bulls is going to be their real advantage. And also, you know, with Ferrari running that more skinnier rear wing, which has given them that extra speed down the straights, has obviously compromised them a little bit on downforce, which is something that you do need a lot of in the slower sections, particularly in Sector 2, where Ferrari expectedly are going to be strong, but of course perhaps not as strong as they would like. And then after that, you've got the two Ferraris, Leclerc ahead of Sainz, with Pierre Gasly, the surprise in P5. I thought he was very good in practice 3. That Honda engine certainly does pack a punch, and I think AlphaTauri is certainly going to be going for it. I think Gasly was the second fastest guy in the speed traps or something like that. I think only Alonso was faster than him, and Alpine are running a really skinny rear wing, which we'll talk about in a moment. Courtney's gone with Leclerc pole position once again. It'll be Leclerc's 6th pole position of the season, and quite interestingly, Liam, the last time we had, I believe it was mentioned in Free Practice 3, the last time we had a driver that got 3 poles in a row but didn't actually take a win was Nico Rosberg back in 2015. So with the potential of Leclerc getting his 4th pole position in a row, the 6th of the season, and yet only winning 2 Grand Prix so far, how critical is it going to be that Ferrari can convert qualifying into a race win? Because right now, Red Bull have got the right formula, and that's win on Sunday and, you know, come second best on the Saturday, whereas Ferrari seem to have it the wrong way round at the moment.
I mean, I could give you many examples over history where, you know, teams and drivers had really good qualifying sessions but weren't as good in the race, or vice versa. I mean, there are 2 particularly interesting stats. There were 2 world champions who did not take a single pole in the year that they won the world championship. And in fact, one of them was Denny Hulme, who took 1 pole in his Formula One career, which shows that qualifying doesn't always matter and it's all about the race. Niki Lauda had that in 1984, where he focused his strategy, his setup on the race and not on qualifying. But around tracks like Monaco and tracks like that at Melbourne, qualifying is important. However, at a track like Baku, where there's so much there's a lot of chances for overtaking and also a lot of accidents and safety cars, that means that the race is more important than the qualifying in terms of the setups. So I would say that the race is far more important than qualifying, because you can qualify like Daniel Riccardo did, down in 10th, and end up winning it. And you know, that's the beauty of Azerbaijan, because it can cause all sorts of drama, and as a result, the whole race complexion has changed.
Yeah, very much so. And of course, that's a very good point you made, Liam, about making sure your car's set up for the Sunday rather than the Saturday at certain circuits. And this is certainly one of them. With that huge 2-kilometre straight, it's almost more important to make sure that your car is going to be competitive there. And I think this is what Ferrari were worried about after FP1 when they ran the old spec rear wing that had a lot more downforce. they were fast everywhere except for that final straight. And ultimately, when you're battling probably just going to be Red Bull this weekend, given the gulf between those two teams and everybody else, it's like a different league right now that those two are in. You just feel that they need to compete against Red Bull, so they have to go with that in mind. And Alpine have done this as well. That's why they're running the low rear wing. They're not expecting to be brilliant in qualifying because they may give up time in the middle sector, but ultimately in the race, when everyone's all bunched together, that's going to be their strength. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out this weekend. So just going on with Courtney's predictions, we've got the two Red Bulls behind Leclerc in at the front. Then you've got Carlos Sainz P4, George Russell P5. And then we've got Lee's predictions where he's gone for Sergio Perez to be on pole position this afternoon, followed by Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, and Lando Norris. Liam, on the subject of Sergio Perez, obviously signing that new contract with the team, keeping him there until 2024, it's the longest deal that a number 2 driver at Red Bull has had for quite some time, since Daniel Ricciardo was at the team with Max Verstappen, and back then they were probably well beyond equal terms at the time. In your mind, with Checo so close in the championship right now to the likes of Leclerc and Verstappen, and with a longer term deal in his pocket now, and seemingly no obvious alternative to Checo in that second Red Bull seat, do you think there's more room for him now to be a little bit more aggressive in the fight with Verstappen, or do you feel that perhaps for the sake of the team, he'll still continue to be relatively happy to play the team game?
I think that to answer your question, I think that Perez should be more aggressive, because I think that over a race distance, Perez is actually better than Verstappen, because he has such good, Perez is so good with his tires, he can make different strategies to the others and gain from it. We saw that, we've seen that many times where he's been the so-called tire whisperer, and he's been able to get some very good performances because of that. And I think that if he does go that one step beyond what many other Red Bull drivers have done, I think he could potentially be a championship contender this year.
Yeah, no, very much so. Just looking through social media to see if there are any updates, because at the moment we're watching Karen Chanduk running around the Mercedes garage. Looks like Mercedes are doing a lot of work on their car, because, as you pointed out earlier, Liam, there seems to be a lot of issues with Mercedes and porpoising. And unlike Ferrari, Mercedes can't really drive through it. It seems to be affecting them to the point where it's costing them performance, whereas Ferrari, porpoising as much as anyone else, but they seem to be handling it just fine. So, in your mind, what are your thoughts about Mercedes this week, and can they find a way to break away from that midfield? Because despite the encouragement that we saw in Barcelona, it does feel that that car still operates on a knife edge, where if it's bumpy or not very comfortable for them, or the car's not in the right window, which is a very narrow one at least, it still seems to struggle to try and get anywhere near the front two.
Yeah, they struggled. I think they'll struggle. They're going to struggle a lot in street circuits this year until they solve the porpoising issue. And I think that it's near impossible for them to break away from the midfield, because they've only got 13 minutes until qualifying. How are they going to be able to make that one step? How are they going to be able to make that step when they've not been able to do it in the other 2 practice sessions? How are they going to be able to figure out that issue, which can get them ahead of AlphaTauri, Alpine, Aston Martin, McLaren, and get them back in that spot, back in that top 3 fighting for pole position? I don't think that they'll be there. I think they'll be bottom of the top 10, a bit like how they were in where was it again, where they didn't get any cars since Q3.
Oh, that would have been in Saudi Arabia. They both, yeah. And Lewis went out in Q1 as well, didn't he? So
I think they might be a little bit quicker than that, but I think they will be struggling quite a bit, because Alpine are looking decent, not amazing, and AlphaTauri are looking fantastic. So they're going to be the main competitors for Mercedes. And I saw a tweet about how I think the best lap time that each team could get, and Mercedes were 6th on the list, behind AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and no, they were 5th, sorry, behind Ferrari and Red Bull and AlphaTauri and Aston Martin. And that shows how slow they have been this weekend. But maybe, just maybe, they could make that step up and be fighting for the top 3 rows of the grid. However, I doubt it.
Yeah, it does feel like the strengths of that car is very much in the high speed corners, of which there are very few of them in Baku, to the point where, you know, the high-speed corners are literally in the final sector, but they almost act like straights in these cars now, so there's not really much advantage to them. So this is certainly not a circuit I'm expecting Mercedes to set the headlines, unless it's an absolute crazy race and we get something like what we saw last year. We'll have to wait and see. Just looking through the chat, got Mark's prediction in there. He's got Perez, Verstappen in the front two, Leclerc, Sainz, and Russell. So, yeah, he, like me, he thinks it's going to be a Red Bull front row, although the other way around, and Perez has been mightily quick, so there's absolutely every chance that could come true. And George Russell in P5. So, it will be quite interesting to see how that goes. Guys, of course, if you are new and you haven't weighed in on the chat, please do. Let us know your predictions as well. Say hi. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as well. Just to remind you guys, whilst we've still got a little bit of time, just under 10 minutes before qualifying gets underway, qualifying is broken up into 3 sections, Q1, Q2 and Q3. Q1, 18 minutes, where we lose the bottom 5 runners and they will make up places 20th to 16th. Then Q2, it's 15 minutes of running, and then we will take the next 5 out of that session, make up places Q15 to Q11, and then we have the top 10 shootout in Q3, 12 minutes of flat-out driving to determine who's going to be on pole position for tomorrow's race. And as another reminder, for those of you that are somewhat familiar with Formula 1 qualifying, the new rule change this year is that the time that the front runners set their fastest times in Q2 to determine what tyres they start the race on is no longer valid, meaning that they can set their times on whatever tyre they like. They will have a free choice of tyre for the race, which I think for this race more than others is actually going to be quite critical. I would not be surprised, Liam, if we see a lot of drivers start on harder tyres tomorrow if they've got a pace advantage, although starting on the softer tyres might compromise you on strategy a little bit, but it may give you a better start. So it might be interesting to see how some of the teams play that one now that they have a free choice of tyre all the way up the grid.
Yeah, I think last year it was quite a warm race, and I'd expect the same to come this year. So who knows? I mean, the track surface is quite different to that of the circuits that we've for most of the other circuits that we've been at this year. So it's going to be a lot bumpier, and I can imagine that the tires will degrade similar to that of how they did in Catalonia. I think that, you know, keeping in mind that a third of the track is that main straight, I think that the cars are going to suffer just as much in the corners as they are on the straights because of the porpoising. So I think that the tires that they start on will be really important, because if you start on the hards, you could have a slightly slower start to the race, but by 10-15 laps into the race, you'll be in a much better place than those who are on the softs. So I think that tire strategy is going to be really crucial about this race. And I think, as you said, many of the drivers will be starting on the harder compounds.
It's a very interesting gamble. As I said, if I was a race strategist, I'm sure there are probably race strategists that probably hear something like that enough for their own 2 cents as to why I'm wrong. Most likely I probably am. But I feel that the hards would be the safer bet. At the same time, though, because you can go longer in the race, and obviously if you get a safety car later on, as we often do, then you can have a cheap pit stop then, put on a fresh set of mediums or softs if you're that far into the race and go to the end on them. Of course, there is the other side of the coin, where if you start on the mediums and you have a safety car around 20-25 laps in, you can take your one pit stop, put on a set of hards and go to the end. Whereas everybody else will still be hesitant to pit because they can't put on a set of softs or another set of mediums because they'd have to make another pit stop. So it's all about balance. It's all about making the right decision at the right time. And as you can see, Chris Welch is in the chat as well. Hi, Chris. Hope you are doing well. He's gone with a top 5. Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Perez and Russell. So similar top 5 to Mark in terms of who is in the top 5, but obviously a little bit of a different order as well. Liam, whilst we got a little bit of time, obviously for those who don't know Liam and his content, obviously Liam is very much an F1 history buff, knows so much more about F1 than I could even dream of knowing. It's ridiculous how much knowledge he has of the sport, which is incredible at such a young age as well. But I want to give you a hypothetical question that I often give to guests on this show, and that's if I could give you an F1 car, any F1 car that you like in history, to drive around any circuit in the world. Doesn't have to be an F1 circuit. It can be any circuit, that could be even your local kart track if you wanted to, and you could do it for a day. What car would you choose, and what circuit would you go to?
I would have to go with As you know, I'm a big Jim Clark fan, so I would have to see the Lotus 25 because the car he won his first, both of his world championships with, in a way. And it's really tricky. I would probably drive it around. I'd probably say the Nordschleife because that's really, really experiencing what the Grand Prix drivers did in those days. That's obviously one of the most dangerous tracks in the world, but it'd probably be a heck of a lot of fun as well. It'd either be Nordschleife or Silverstone, but the first thing that came to my head was the Nordschleife.
I tell you what, that's my favourite answer of anyone that's actually answered that question. I was counting on that as well, Liam. I was counting on a nice retro answer, and I think you can't get better than a Jim Clark Lotus, and the Nordschleife as well is absolutely beautiful. Beautiful scenario there. And for those of you who don't know who Jim Clark is, check Liam's channel out because you are certainly missing out. One of the greatest, if not, some people would say the greatest driver of all time. Just about to get into qualifying now, just a few minutes away, guys. As I said, get your responses in, get your predictions in at the moment. I want to see that chat lighting up with lots of predictions on there as well. Chris Welch also saying he thinks Leclerc will win the race. So, you know what, as a bit of a Ferrari fan, as much as I try to stay impartial on this show, I do hope that is the case because I think Charles Leclerc definitely needs to get back on track and start winning Grand Prix. Crazy stat, as I said, as you mentioned, Liam, but both him and Verstappen have the same number of poles in their F1 careers, yet Verstappen has won so many more races. It just goes to show how important it is to be good on a Sunday. Not saying Leclerc isn't, and he has had quite a rough share of bad luck, it must be said, but you know, everyone loves a good qualifier, but unless you get the result done on a Sunday, it ultimately comes to nothing. Liam, before we get underway for qualifying, is there anyone in the field right now, in your opinion, that might provide a surprise in that midfield?
I'm gonna say, as we were talking earlier about that graph that I saw about best car performances, I think Sebastian Vettel's gonna get to Q3 because the Aston Martin is looking very good at his hands at the moment, and I think he's going to get into Q3, maybe score some points this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad shout, to be fair. I was watching Seb this morning, he was looking quite good, and do you know what? He's looking very good at the moment. I mean, there's been a lot of people questioning whether or not he was going to still be in the sport or not and be on this season, but at the moment, he certainly seems to be doing great. And the cars are now starting to line up at the end of the pit lane, so obviously they want to get the session started underway. Just a reminder, guys, if you're enjoying this so far, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're chasing 1,000 subscribers and we need your help to do that, so hopefully, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Just waiting for the light to go green before we get going for qualifying. And
I'm quite a bit behind you.
Yes, you are a little bit behind, Liam, but don't worry, I'm sure you'll be able to keep up as best as you can, guys. So just seeing literally the crowd, every single one of them with either a glass of their favourite vintage in their hand or a phone, and they've got a couple of Ferrari fans with Mexican flags there. They must be Mexican because I was a little bit confused there. And I mean, it's the right colour scheme, just not the right country for Ferrari. But never mind. Ferrari was such a worldwide fan base; it doesn't really matter where you're from, to be honest. As long as you wear that red, you're all part of the Scuderia Ferrari family. As you see, Checo coming out of the garage now.
I can see a McLaren and an AlphaTauri coming out, so I think I'm a little bit behind. Because you said they were lining up in the pit lane about a minute ago, and that's just starting for me. So
yeah, we haven't got going quite yet. We're just about to get underway. I think we're just under a minute away now. So we'll have to wait and see. He's got the 2 Red Bulls lined up in the garage. Got the 2 Mercedes lined up behind them, and ironically for Mercedes, if they could get anywhere near that close to Red Bull this weekend, they'd be very, very happy with that. But as much as I'd like to see Mercedes in the championship fight, I'm not sure this weekend's going to be the one. But who knows? Who knows? I predicted Lewis to get P3 at the start of the week, so what do I know? I change my mind all the time. And yeah, it's still a bit of a delay. Everyone's literally eager to get out. So perhaps track conditions may be peaking at this point. So
I saw the Ferrari fans with the Mexican flag. I finally saw it. I was like, there they are. There they are. There's the Ferrari fans with the Mexican flag. they must be lifelong Riccardio Rodriguez supporters.
Maybe. You know, it's very popular to be a Mexican fan these days with Checo Perez doing so well, and of course the history of Mexican racing, not as stacked as you'd expect, but still one that's very rich now. As we're about to get underway for qualifying, Lando Norris, the first guy leading the team out of the pits. On the subject of McLaren, Liam, obviously they've been going relatively strongly in Lando's hands, but Daniel Ricciardo this weekend so far has looked a lot more on the pace compared to his teammates. So in your mind, how important is this weekend for Ricciardo? Because the contract situation with him and the team, it's a little bit of a stalemate. Clearly, both sides are not quite happy with how things are at the moment. The power does seem to be in Daniel's hands owing to his own future at the team, as far as I understand. So, in your opinion, how critical is it for Daniel Ricciardo to start getting back into form? And also, in addition to that, why do you think he's struggling at the moment compared to his teammate?
Well, that's the thing. I think that, like when Max Verstappen came to Red Bull, I think I think having a young gun in the team isn't actually helping him. Although, and I can give you really good evidence of that. 2015, Red Bull, he got beaten by Danny Kvyat in his first season at Red Bull. 2018, Max Verstappen was outperforming him consistently. And when Ricciardo came to McLaren, everyone was expecting him to be up there with Lando, but no such thing has happened. He's been really, really off the pace of Lando for most of the year. And of course, he was the one that took the victory in Italy for them. But I think it's because he's got a younger teammate, and I think that this weekend will be very important for him because he's won around here before. He's had some very good results around Baku when he's not crashing to his teammate. And he can be very good around street circuits. He won Monaco a few years ago. He's running around Baku. He's a bit like a Keke Rosberg in a way, very good at street circuits. But if he has a good result this weekend, maybe McLaren maybe he'll get his confidence back. Maybe McLaren will feel a little bit more steady with him, and maybe he could have a better year after this round if he has a good round. If he has a good couple of rounds, he'll start to get more consistent and maybe be on Lando's pace.
Yeah, there certainly is an element to the teammate in that conversation with Ricciardo, because I think a lot of people haven't really addressed it. I think they've kind of ignored the fact that Lando Norris, right now, is driving really, really well. It was a little bit of a slow start to the season, the first couple of races, but then, of course, he got a couple of great results in Imola, got a podium at Imola, of course, P4 in Australia, and he's been in that sort of upper echelon with the exception, I think it was the Spanish Grand Prix where he was outside the top 10, but otherwise, he was still very, very good, and I think that's quite key. I think a lot of people don't appreciate how good Lando Norris is and why he could be a lead contender in championships in the future, in this new crop of generation. I think that is kind of part of McLaren's thinking. But of course, Ricciardo's no slouch. He's certainly not a bad driver. He certainly hasn't become one overnight. So there is certainly room for Daniel Ricciardo to try and get back to at least the level where his teammate is on a more regular basis. But hopefully this weekend will prove to be a good one for him. He's quite handy at street circuits. He's won here in the past. I think it was 2017. I think he was the first winner, unless I'm mistaken, something like that.
Well, yeah, first winner of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Yeah. The first winner at Baku was, of course, the man who wasn't allowed in paddock in Monaco because he didn't have his COVID vaccine.
That's right, Nico Rosberg. Yeah, so quite an interesting story, Nico Rosberg. Obviously not allowed in the paddock because he's hasn't had his vaccine. So we're not going to weigh in on that one. Because that's a completely different minefield altogether. As Lando Norris sets the first time of the day, 1:45.0 on the soft tyres. Obviously, pole position is not going to be anywhere near that today. And there's a yellow flag in Sector 1, which obviously I'm guessing someone's gone a bit wide, but they should be fine. The two Alpines gone fastest now. Ocon 1:44.2, Alonso 1:44.7. On board with Checo Perez now with his first lap of the day. And it'll be interesting to see what he can do, Liam, in Checo Perez. How do you think he's going to get on this afternoon? I know you had him quite high up the field, but could he get on top of his teammate this afternoon?
I mean, looking at the practice pace, there's things to point out to it potentially. Also, I am about a minute behind you, I will tell you now, because when you said Norris has gone fastest, he was just at the end of the first sector for me. But to go back to your question, I think that Perez has been. He's not particularly amazing in qualifying. He obviously he's only taken one pole in his career, but obviously he's only been in a top team for a couple of seasons. I think that he could beat Verstappen today if he gets the right time. both in how quick he is and also when he's on the track, when he's doing the lap, then I think he could beat Max because, as you've seen with Max, he's had his fair share of bad luck when it comes to traffic and when it comes to red flags and yellow flags when he's on his flying laps.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you actually what you thought pole time might be if it was going to get a 1:42 today, but we're already in there. Max Verstappen goes fastest, 1:42.9. Checo Perez just a few tenths behind. Charles Leclerc P3, just behind Checo with Carlos Sainz in P4, a little bit further down, but obviously Sainz had a bit of a dodgy middle sector. So the Red Bulls and the Ferraris already looking like they're in a league of their own right now, seeing what's going on with Lewis Hamilton. So, well, that's a bit of an interesting one. So obviously there's this thing going on at the moment, Liam, and you'll see this in a bit with the drivers driving a little bit slowly towards the end of the final sector and not overtaking each other. That sort of gentleman's agreement that they're supposed to have where they don't overtake each other if they're all trying to wait for a lap. Just had Hamilton on board there with George Russell overtaking him at the end, but he was being held up by Max Verstappen, who was waiting to start a lap. So what's your thoughts on that one, Liam, in regarding to that sort of final sector agreement the drivers had? Do you feel like they should all just respect that and just not do anything silly, or do you feel like it's just every man for himself in this regard?
I mean, this is quite an interesting topic because it brings up the whole debate of drivers getting penalised for ruining other drivers' laps, and I think that well, I'm just seeing the replay now.
Well, it's more etiquette than regulation, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's kind of the thing.
Yeah, because obviously, if you don't know already, a gentleman's agreement isn't regulation. It's just sort of something that
well, it's a handshake at best, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically like a handshake, and I don't really care about it too much, to be honest. If I had to be honest, and I just say every man for himself. As long as it doesn't get too dangerous, then I don't really mind if it's if drivers are going off on their own, are doing it on their own will, or if they're slowing down for others.
Well, yeah, because you kind of get to a point where obviously, people are going to go slow to shape up for their laps, but then you'll get a case where someone's going excessively slow for whatever reason, and you're holding everyone up as Verstappen looked like he was doing there. So it is what it is, but I'm with you on this one. I think when you get to really, really desperate times and situations where you really just have to get on with it, it's down to being in the right place at the right time. And if you're going too slow and someone overtakes you, then, it's not ideal, but what can you do on this one? Just 10 minutes to go in qualifying. George Russell, obviously up into P4 now, so that's a good lap for him in the Mercedes. He's just got ahead of Sainz, 8 tenths off of Verstappen, so that's a bit more like it. Ocon in P6, Alonso P7, Vettel P9, Tsunoda P10, Hamilton so first run, 1.5 seconds off the pace in P12 now as Gasly goes P7 with a 1:44.0. Riccardo improves to 1:44.4. So there's a clear gulf right now between the front drivers and the rest. Obviously, Sainz is in that, but I'm expecting him to be out of that one as well. On the subject of surprises as well, Liam, Alfa Romeo, especially Valtteri Bottas, not looking too shabby this weekend. I mean, the car looks good. They're running a nice Italian livery, but surprisingly, that car is not operating on all cylinders right now.
No, it's not. And that is the magic of Formula One, I guess. One round, Alfa Romeo were up fighting for the top 5 with Valtteri Bottas, and then the next round they're absolutely nowhere with both Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas. Although Valtteri's on his lap now, and even then he's got a slower first sector than Alex Albon, and he's about on the pace of Albon. So he's not doing exactly brilliantly. Sorry, Kevin Magnussen, I should say. He's on similar pace to that of Kevin Magnussen's at the moment, as he comes in towards the final couple of corners now. By the way, I've got the F1 TV graphics up. That's why I know that. And he's gone 17th, so he was even slower than Magnussen. He was much slower than Magnussen, in fact.
Yeah, just watching the two Ferraris now as Carlos Sainz goes third fastest. Leclerc goes fastest of all. So they've now responded, and literally Leclerc to Sainz is literally a tenth separating the two Ferraris with Verstappen in the middle. So that's a bit more like it from Ferrari. I think they're definitely going to be hoping to be as close as that to Red Bull. Verstappen just has this amazing ability to just be quick the moment he goes out on track. Just watching a replay of Sebastian Vettel going off in one of the escape roads is what we talked about earlier, Liam. Drivers really pushing the limits around this circuit, and sometimes Even the slightest error, brake a little bit later than you anticipated, carry a bit too much speed and steering lock, and you're going to have to make that decision very quickly whether or not to go to the runoff or into the barrier at the same time. So just looking through the order, Zhou Guan Yu, surprise there, gone up to P5. So we said Alfa Romeo was struggling, but he's managed to put that car in P5. I want to see that lap again, as Verstappen and Perez now on next flying laps, and they're both up in the first two sectors. Perez goes purple in sector 2, Max purple sector 1.
I was gonna say, I bet your bottom dollar that Red Bull are gonna set purple sectors, and I think the reason why Zhou Guan Yu's up in 5th is because of track evolution, as Perez goes first fastest.
Well, he must have got a toe somewhere, and that's another thing as well. Yeah, so Perez just goes fastest. Verstappen 3,000ths of his teammates, so that's about what I was expecting. Red Bull just to have an extra tenth or two in hand on Ferrari at the moment, but. Yeah, I mean, it could be track evolution. It probably is to a degree. I think it's more down to slipstream. He must have got a lovely slipstream off of someone, which we saw this morning, Liam. Paul di Resta on commentary saying it could be worth as much as 5, maybe 6/10ths of a second to the right car. And in Q2 in particular, that could be mega as Verstappen goes fastest, 11,000ths faster than his teammates. So right now, yeah, they have a tenth or two in hand over the Ferrari. Probably more a tenth to Leclerc, but... certainly advantage Red Bull right now. But yeah, that slipstream is going to be critical this afternoon.
Yeah, it will be. And you know, at some tracks it'll be much heavier than others. This is one of the examples of it being higher because of I think sea level comes into it in a way, doesn't it? So
well, yeah, I mean, obviously on a track like this, if you're running a lower downforce rear wing, the higher to sea level that you are, it's going to be more effective. It's actually going to be less effective actually with lower air density. But yeah, you're right. You're obviously the closer to sea level that you are as well, the air is going to be a little bit thicker, which is going to make it more important with that slipstream as well if you can get it. So plenty of variables on a street circuit as well to take into account. It's the thing you love about F1. It's so technical and complicated, so nuanced as well. So yeah, it's an incident between Magnussen and Mick Schumacher, pit lane incident. I'm not sure what Haas are up to there, but on the subject,
I think that was when they were when I think Mick was right behind Magnussen and he sort of released a bit dangerously. I don't really know if that was
a bit strange. They're having a very strange weekend, Haas, at the moment, especially Mick Schumacher, a driver who obviously came out of F2, a lot of promise because obviously the name that he carries, but he also carried performance as well as that. How important a weekend is this going to be for Mick Schumacher? More than anything else, just to have a clean one, try and show some performance in the race, because he seems to be okay in qualifying. But for whatever reason, in the race, he's either drops down the order near the end and he just doesn't keep the pace going, or he ends up into the barrier and crashing the car. He just lacks that consistency right now.
Yeah, and I think you could see... I mean, you could see something similar for Magnussen as well, but Magnussen doesn't crash as much, you know, because the Haas have really been struggling the last few races to score points. I mean, the last good round that they actually had was Miami, and we got a yellow flag on the track. I don't know what that's for.
Yeah. Oh, it's a crash. It's Lance Stroll has just crashed into the barrier.
That's the second year in a row that he's crashed.
I think that's at turn 7. Oh, he's reversing out. Just George Russell sees it. But yeah, just at turn 7. He's managed to get out of there. He's reversed out of the barrier. So back to green flag. Looks like the barrier did its job. The techno barrier, as they call them, done its job there and has allowed him to reverse out. But yeah, just a crash at turn 7. Just watching the replay now. It comes through. Looks okay so far. And I'm going to expect... Yeah, he's carried way too much speed into turn 7 and he's gone straight into the barrier. Fortunately, though, as I said, one of the new techno barriers allows, or Techo, I can't remember what they call them, but I call them techno just because it sticks in my head, but it's probably not correct at all. But or Tech Pro, I'm just reading it on the screen. This how, but I'm reading the barrier. Tech Pro barrier.
Techno was actually a Formula 1 team. Techno, there was an F1 team called Techno, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, if there is, Liam, you would know, mate. Don't worry about that. But yeah, Tech Pro barrier, that's the name. So I was reading the barrier there, but that's the one.
Yes, there was a team. There was an F1 team called Techno. They did 10 Grand Prix, and in 1972 and 1973, they never scored any points. Sadly, sad face. And there were they still exist actually. And one of the guys who worked for them was the guy who co-founded the Brabham F1 team with Jack Brabham, Ron Tornak. So
Is that right? Wow. Oh,
and
another crash. And what car is that? It looks like an Aston Martin again. Is
it
that a
must be.
crash? And
Is
it's
it
Stroll
Stroll?
again. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Stroll again. And this
Oh,
is definitely going to be a red flag. He's completely,
yeah, red flag.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
smashed the right front. The front wings come off. He's just parked it over to the side. Looks like the exit of turn 2. And so we got our first red flag with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go. So I'm going to stop the clock there and change it.
What I was gonna say was the reason why I went ooh was because the fastest third sector now belongs in the hands of Stroll's teammate Sebastian Vettel, who's just gone fifth fastest. So maybe my prediction could be right after all about him getting into Q3. I mean, his pace is looking very good, but well, Lance Stroll for the second year in a row having a little incident in Q1. Let's hope unlike last year that he doesn't. Oh yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, the tires pretty inflated. Oh my goodness, yeah. His whole front tires come off. Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, he's just carried too much speed into the corner. That's pretty much, and this is the danger of this track. This is the risk where, and he did go a bit wide. He didn't quite hit the apex into the corner either. So it's just how it goes sometimes around this circuit. You've got to go for it. You've got to leave nothing on the table, especially in this midfield with as stacked as they are and as close as they are together. And that's what happens when you get it wrong. There's no rewind. There's no flashback. Literally, that's your qualifying over.
It's not an F1 game.
No, I'm pretty sure Lance Stroll probably wished it was an F1 game, but I don't think he'll be worrying about the damages. His dad will just foot the bill, as we'd expect anyway. The man with practically the safest seat in Formula 1 right now. But no, on the subject of Vettel, P5 at the moment, only half a second. So he must have got a slipstream off of somebody, Liam.
Yeah,
that is incredibly fast.
There's a 24.8 in the last sector. I do not know. I don't even think. I think that without a toe, that must be at least 2 or 3 tenths slower, and that would still put him in 5th place, but he's only half a second off of the leaders, which is absolutely crazy considering that in round 1 Aston Martin was plumb last in the order. So for him to get that car up to P5 shows that he's still actually got a lot of talent. Either that or Stroll's making him look like he's a god. I'm not criticizing Lance Stroll, of course. But,
oh no, you can do that on this show. That's absolutely fine, mate. If people are actually really sensitive about their best drivers, we just call them mid and just be done with it. Doesn't really, nobody's safe. Nobody's safe.
I don't want to get cancelled though.
That's all right. You're on my channel, mate. The only one getting cancelled is probably going to be me, so it's fine. We'll just live with it. But no, you're right about Sebastian Vettel. He has been driving really well. And as I said, this is a guy who, for all intents and purposes, we don't know if he's still going to be in F1. And I'll be honest with you, mate. I think this is the best that I've seen Seb drive for a few years now at the moment. He's really wringing the neck out of that car, getting the performance. And maybe it might be enough to convince him going forward if the car is improving, whether it's going to be at a rate quick enough to convince Vettel to stay, because this is a guy who obviously does not have the drive of Fernando Alonso to try and become a world champion again. I think he'd like to if he could, but I think realistically speaking, Vettel knows that at the moment it's more about just enjoying what he's doing rather than worrying about where he's actually going to finish on a Sunday afternoon compared to Alonso. So it's great to see that he's certainly looking quicker, but right now, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on this one? Do you think Vettel's going to stick around for the future for another year or two, or do you feel that perhaps he's just wind it down and then perhaps announce his retirement later on in the year?
I hope he stays because I think he's a very, very good driver. He's a great spokesperson for the sport. He's very, very he's a brilliant person when it comes to political beliefs. He's very, very good at campaigning and that sort of stuff. But I also really want him to stay because he's a very, very talented driver. I think that since he joined Aston Martin, he's been completely different. You know, when he was at his last year at Ferrari, disastrous. But since he joined Aston Martin, he's been pretty good. You know, if he didn't have that podium taken away from him in Hungary, he would have been 10 points off of the 2 Alpines in the championship, which is crazy to think about considering Alpine finished 5th in the constructors, and Aston Martin finished in 7th. So I think he's still got it, and I really want him to stay because I think he's a very good driver, and also I met him in real life. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Qualifying is going to restart in 5 minutes. So we ain't got a long delay, which is good because Liam and I have both got plans after qualifying. Separate plans, obviously. Just before get that one out there. And obviously we don't want to be held waiting too much, at least for our own benefit. But we'll wait and see how this goes on. There's always going to be a red flag or something like that in qualifying in Baku. It seems one of the more commonly used flags around this circuit for obvious reasons. It's like most street circuits when you have a crash. Yeah, you can't really get going like other places. You have to just wait for it to be cleared up as everyone's sort of waiting at the end of the pit lane 3 or 4 minutes before we're about to get going. So hopefully those engines won't get cooked too much. Looking at the chat as well, just...
Brendo says, you're showing 6th. What have I missed?
Well,
Stroll's had a crash, but apart from that, not much else.
No, we'll run through the order in a minute. For those of you that aren't obviously watching this with us, if you aren't watching F1 at the moment and can only follow it through us, we'll run through the order in just a sec. But yeah, Joe in 6th, we didn't see that lap either, unfortunately, Brendo. So he must have got one hell of a slipstream. Same with Seb Vettel in P5. But I'll run through the order as we've got 2.5 minutes to go whilst we wait for qualifying to get back underway. We've got the 2 Red Bulls at the moment, filling the top 2 spaces in Q1. Of course, we've got 2 more qualifying sessions to come after this one this afternoon. Only 11 thousandths of a second separating the 2 Red Bulls right now. Leclerc in P3 for Ferrari, followed by Carlos Sainz, who's just less than a tenth after him. Seb Vettel in the Aston Martin in P5, half a second off Verstappen. He must have got a brilliant slipstream. Like to see that lap again. Guan Yu Zhou P6, George Russell P7, the lead Mercedes with Esteban Ocon in P8. Lewis Hamilton P9, 1.2 seconds off the pace at the moment, with Gasly P10. And then we've got Alonso in the Alpine P11, Norris P12 for McLaren, Tsunoda 13th for AlphaTauri, Riccardio 14th for McLaren, Kevin Magnussen, the last driver at this point in time going through into Q2, 1.9 seconds off Verstappen at the moment. And then the bottom 5, we've got Albon, Valtteri Bottas, Nicholas Latifi, Lance Stroll, who is now out of qualifying, and of course will be starting on the back row of the grid, assuming that there are no penalties to come after qualifying. And then we've got Mick Schumacher, dead last, 3 seconds off the pace. And yeah, it's quite a lot going on there. A huge spread, you must say, compared to some of the other races this season. But 3 seconds from the first car to the last car, Liam. I'm not expecting that to be the final outcome, but F1 30, 40 years ago would have loved a field spread of around 3 seconds from the first car to the last car.
I was literally about to get on to that because I've been writing a season review for 1974, and one thing that I noticed was, I don't remember what round of the season it was, but the gap in qualifying between cars, I think it might have been, was it Brazil? The gap in cars was a few tenths for each of them, for each position. It was South Africa. The gap between 1st and 14th at the 1974 South African Grand Prix qualifying was 1.03 seconds. And that is the same, and that gap nowadays is the difference between 1st and, as it stands, 6th place. So, yeah, I think the field spread is actually almost identical to what it was back in 1974, because the gap between 1st and last is still 3 seconds, but it's much closer in the middle.
Yeah, very much so. I'm sort of just looking through, because you're saying about 1.3 seconds. That 1.3 seconds was the gap between 1st and 17th in Bahrain qualifying Q1. So, and literally, the entire field spread was about, just over 2 seconds. So, yeah, for people that are saying that 3 seconds is, all right, it is a massive amount of time, but I remember, Liam, when obviously you're be a bit too young to remember this, but the old 107% rule, which technically is still in force to some degree today, not that we ever need to use it in F1, but I remember the times, earliest memories of F1, watching 95, 96 World Championship, and it wasn't as bad as it was in the 80s, where you used to have anybody turn up. There wasn't a prerequisite for performance. You literally could turn up with an F1 car, and it was as long as it was legal to race, you could race it. And then be like 20 seconds, I think, like the old Lola car or something, or there were a few that come to mind. You'd know better than I would. absolute horrible
Yeah.
cars. As we're just about to get underway now. As
Yeah, you mentioned the
mm,
107% rule, and I thought of the 2012 Australian Grand Prix because both the HRTs failed to qualify for that race
that's right, yeah.
because they were over a second behind the 107% time. And I don't remember how far the Lolas were behind. I think they were at least 4 seconds behind. But there have been some really, really
I
bad
was
cars in
trying. I
F1
can't
through
remember
the
what it was, but
years.
there was it's a red Formula One car. I can't remember. I remember Jimmy Broadbent doing it.
Life,
That's
it
it.
was
The
life.
life car, ironically,
Yeah.
was so bad it was dangerous. Like they would never be. But half the time they knew they were never going to get into a Grand Prix. It was just the sake of just for the advertising or the sake that they were there. I don't know. It was crazy stuff you could put your money into. But yeah, we're back underway now. Just got a minute and a half to go. Literally, almost everybody is out, with the exception of the Red Bulls, the Ferraris. Sebastian Vettel, I'd say, is pretty much safe, and Esteban Ocon, who,
I
yeah,
think the less said about one of life's drivers, the better. Um, but that I won't bring up that topic because it's quite a dark topic to bring up. Yeah.
yeah. I think we'll save that for another day. Perhaps a chat on your channel about that one, Liam. I think I know where you're going with this. So yeah, we'll stick to the here and now. Rather than go through that F1 history lesson. But yeah, just looking in the chat as well, before everyone starts their final laps at the moment, I think the two Mercedes are about to get going. I think Lewis Hamilton is actually the first driver over the line. And I think the two Mercedes don't look safe at the moment. I'd say Russell probably, but you never really know with track evolution. Got some team radio for Mick Schumacher. Liam, are you picking up the audio on this as well? Because I'm not. So if you're getting any team radio that's relevant, do feel free to weigh in and let us know.
I'm gonna try and listen to it. Hamilton saying that they need to try and get temperature into their tires.
Well, that's not uncommon because Mercedes, one of the things they have struggled with this year is getting their tyres warmed up, which has hampered their qualifying performance. I think it was in 2 races where they failed to be the lead car in that midfield in qualifying, which is surprising for Mercedes that we're even talking about them in the midfield. That we should be worrying about Ferrari and Red Bull rather than all the rather than the rest of the midfield if you're a Mercedes fan. But here we go. Seen in the chat as Hamilton's now on his first final lap. They've got the graphic there that he's 6 tenths down to Verstappen in sector 1.
Yeah, he's slower than Ocon as well.
Yeah.
And Gasly.
Yeah, it's so strange. It literally, I think, what was I just saw the other day? I think this would be the first time since 1954, that far back, although caveat, Mercedes were out of the sport for quite a few decades in between those 2 periods that they were in the sport. But since 1954, this would be the first time since then that Mercedes have failed to get a car into the top 3 in qualifying at this point of the season. And bear in mind, back in those days, that probably would have constituted a full season, this many races. So
yeah, because this is what, round 8 of the season, right?
yeah, we'd have already had a season back in those days.
Yeah, probably. And keep in mind that the drivers that were racing in that era for them were some of the finest of history. You've got Fangio and Moss, who both drove for Mercedes. And based on the 1954, there was 9 races, but obviously Indy 500 was a part of it. So yeah, this would be this is round 8, right? So it'd be the season finale technically.
So sorry, just to cut through there, Liam. So Hamilton doesn't improve. He's finished. George Russell did, but he only went up to 8th. Gasly's gone up to P5, half a second off the. So the times are tumbling. Hamilton could be at risk here, guys. You see Bottas coming over the line. Where's he going to go? Only 15th. So Bottas does not make it through. Neither does Alex Albon. So right now we've got Magnussen on a lap. We've got Latifi on a lap. We've got Mick Schumacher. So Hamilton should. Well, yeah, he could be safe. We'll have to see what Alonso, the 2 McLarens do. Magnussen's pitted, so he's given up. So's Mick Schumacher, so Hamilton should be okay. I think it's only Alonso and the 2 McLarens that could. Yeah, so Hamilton will be safe. Norris is pitted
as well, I think. I reckon Bottas will be safe because Albon.
There was a yellow in sector 2, so that really hurt a lot of people's laps. So I think ultimately that sector 2 yellow flag, I'm not sure who caused it, but that seems to have saved a lot of drivers. But Valtteri Bottas just about gets through, actually.
Yeah, because I think Albon's done with his session. I'm not sure. Yeah, Yeah, definitely. Albon's definitely
Yeah,
down.
it said he wasn't through Bottas, unless I misread the graphic. Well, he is definitely through, guys. So just to confirm, obviously that's the end of Q1. The eliminated cars, we've got Lance Stroll, obviously was the first one out after his crash. He starts 19th. We've got Magnussen just narrowly missing out in P16, followed by Albon and Latifi. And then we've got Mick Schumacher dead last at the moment. Again, with Mick Schumacher, it's been such a difficult weekend with reliability issues and driving on this circuit. I mean, more than anything else, I think, it's all there for him in the race tomorrow. I think that's the way that he's got to look at it. Try and have a consistently clean race. It could be quite chaotic. I remember last season it was madness, and he had that run down to the line, dangerous one at that with his teammate Nikita Mazepin. But he still managed to finish, what was it, P13 or something like that? So there's still hope for Mick Schumacher. I'm pretty sure if someone offered him P13 tomorrow, he'd probably take it to a degree. So, yeah, let's hope for his sake that he goes through. But obviously, Hamilton, the one driver that we were worried about initially, but that Sector 2 yellow flag, obviously able to allow him to not worry about going out in Q1 again, because obviously we didn't want another Jeddah sort of scenario, did we, Liam?
Well, no, because we want to see, the Mercedes cars fighting up there with the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. The more competition, the merrier. Um, I'm just thinking back to 1982, but yeah. Anyway, enough about the history lesson. Yeah, I'd love to see Mercedes fighting back right back at the top where they were last year. Because we haven't seen a Ferrari. Who doesn't love a good Mercedes Red Bull Ferrari fight, eh? Even though Mercedes won every single one of them.
It just feels like we haven't really had that in F1. Like, we've had Mercedes always been at the front in the turbo hybrid era. Obviously, before Mercedes came to the front, it was Ferrari and Red Bull for a large part of that 4 years.
McLaren as well.
And McLaren, of course, let's not forget them. And it's always been Mercedes against Ferrari, or Mercedes against Red Bull, or Mercedes against Mercedes, rather than anyone else. We've not really had one, or a trifecta between those three teams. And I think these regulations kind of gave hope that that's what we were going to get. But alas, Mercedes still with plenty of work to do. Liam, in your mind, asking the difficult question here, do you think Mercedes can win a Grand Prix this weekend? I mean, I don't think championship is realistic at this point in time, but what about a race win? Do you think that's possible for them?
I think anything is possible this year for any team because of how close it is compared to what it was last year. I think how many surprise winners did we have last year? We had 2 surprise winners last year. And we had a few surprise pole sitters as well. And I think that I think Mercedes will win a race this year. It's just a matter of when they can get their car tuned the way they like it for both of their drivers. And I think if I had to say out the 2 drivers that would be more likely to win a race, I think it'd be Russell right now, because he's much stronger than Hamilton, much more consistent than Hamilton's been this year. I think he's still ahead of Sainz in the World Championship even. So
he is, yeah.
I think Mercedes, I think they will win a race this year.
Yeah, just looking at something here, just on Albon's lap. I don't know what he's going through on the team radio, but I think someone went off at the end of Sector 2. So this is the fun part about having Sky Q. You can sort of rewind it back just to catch this. Who was ahead of him there? Oh, right. It looked like one of the Alpha Tauris. I might be wrong. Was getting in Albon's way just before the final sector. Went onto the runoff area. It was all over the place. Completely ruined his lap. And I'm pretty sure that... Well, I'm not hearing the audio because it will come through on the stream. Oh, it was actually an Alpine. It was Fernando Alonso. So, it'd be interesting to see...
I'm going to see if I can get his audio.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that one. If Alonso will get into a bit of trouble, because he got completely out of shape, got out of the way, but went into the runoff area. So, yeah, it remains to be seen what will be said there. But Alex Albon, clearly not a very happy bunny right now. But I digress. So looking for the chat on this one, Mark Smith saying Sarries win. So, yeah, I'm not much of a rugby fan, but Mark loves the Saracens. So, good stuff on that one. Brent,
Albon's wanting Alonso to get penalised.
Yeah, it's not a surprise. And we're just saying about that gentleman's agreement there, Liam, and we're just seeing a Haas, I believe probably Kevin Magnussen, overtaking Lando Norris just as he's approaching the high-speed section towards the end of the lap. So, as I said, all fair in love and war right now, and I know Lando Norris won't be happy, and in a way, it was still Rex Magnussen's lap to a degree as well. But that's the nature of it. Everyone's slowing down, but there wasn't much time to get a lap in, so really you had to get on with it. But we're about to get started for Q2 now as the two Red Bulls lead the way. Just reset the timer because I'm a little bit behind on that one, but I digress. There we go. So 14 minutes, 45 seconds. Q2 just starting now. The two Red Bulls leading the way, so obviously they want to get their lap times done soon as possible as the track conditions are starting to cool down a bit, which obviously isn't the worst thing in the world. But if you're a team that struggles to get tyre temperature on a track like this one, which isn't always straightforward to get tyre temperature into your tyres, it's important to go out as soon as possible so that the track temperature is as hot as it possibly can be. Liam, in your mind, could tyre warm-up or tyre or lack thereof be quite critical in this qualifying session?
Yeah, because because if you can't get your tires in the right window, you might need more than one lap to warm up the tires, and that could cost you because you might mistime it, you might get the timing wrong of it, and you might miss out on your lap. And also, if you don't get your tires warmed up enough when you're on the out lap, chances are you're gonna be locking up everywhere. Especially because turn one is such a heavy braking zone, because you're going at over 200 miles an hour, and then you have to slow down back to 80-90 mile an hour into the corner. So I think that tire warm-up will be crucial, because if you can't get those tires into the optimal window, chances are you're going to be struggling.
Yeah, very much so. Just watching Sergio Perez now lining up his first flying lap of the session. The two Red Bulls line stood. And one thing that's quite interesting that I'm quite keen to get your thoughts on as well, Liam, is because the Red Bulls are quite close together at the moment, it's probably not going to happen too much right now. But when we get to Q3, the teamwork may come into play from a few teams to try and get that extra slipstream, which at the moment seems to be worth a hefty chunk of time to a lot of people, and certainly could decide who starts on the front row of the grid tomorrow between the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. With the dynamic at Red Bull seemingly at a fine balance right now, with Checo playing the team game rather than trying to fight Max, based on what we were talking about earlier, is there a risk that perhaps we may not see teamwork from Red Bull? They might be reluctant to help each other because they're both technically in a championship fight at the moment.
I mean, I think that what they need to do first is they need to do what's best for the team. If I was in Sergio Perez's situation, I'd be thinking, okay, I could maybe try and get a better lap in by not getting a tow from Max, or not me towing Max, or me towing Max. But at the same time, you want to play the team game because you want to keep everyone's faces smiling, and you want everyone to be happy in the team, because that helps the team environment. But at the same time, you got to remember these guys are fighting for glory. So maybe, just maybe, they might not play the team game, but it is so important that which one of them gets the tow. And I don't know if they do this, but Haas did it last year, where each race the other driver towed the other. So I don't know if they're going to do that today, though.
Well, just both come across the line now, both doing 1:42.2s. Verstappen just over 0.03 of a second faster than his teammates, so literally nothing to separate them. As I said, you'd almost feel like if one gives one the tow, the other one has to reciprocate it on the second run. But again, it comes into who gets the tow on the final run, or when you want to do that, or if they're both going to do it for each other. I'll be honest with you, if I was in that situation, if I was Checo Perez with that longer term contract in my hand, I probably wouldn't do it. I would probably try and beat my teammate, because let's be honest, Sergio Perez is a very, very good driver. Whether he's good enough to win a world championship remains to be seen, but this could prove to be the best opportunity in his career to win a world championship right now. And I feel like he has to take every chance he can get, whereas Max Verstappen, obviously, he's already a world champion, and, I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come, but you don't really want to give it up if you can afford it. But I don't think Max is going to be as desperate as Checo might be in that situation, but we will see. Brendo's comment in the chat's asking about McLaren. Are they genuinely slow or just taking it easy in Q1? I don't think they are. I think they're certainly up there. Just watching Carlos Sainz goes fastest to 1:42.0. So, and not sure if he had any slipstream, but the Ferraris look like they've turned the engines up a little bit. See what Leclerc does. Leclerc goes
I
P2, so the Ferraris are in the game now, so that's good to see.
I don't think he did because because if he did have slipstream, he probably would have been quite a bit quicker than that. Because
You may,
if
yeah.
you look at the sector splits, he's on Sainz is quicker than Leclerc, but Leclerc in the first sector, but then Leclerc's quicker than Sainz in the second. And so maybe I think maybe Sainz might have gotten a little toll from someone because he is a little bit quicker than Leclerc, but at the same time he could have had a really good exit out heading in towards the S's. So it could be either of those factors.
Quite possibly. Just watching a replay of Charles Leclerc now coming through. Had a little bit of a wobble there. Sort of a little bit squirmish on the exit. Trying to hold that all together. And manages to manage it. I think that's on the end of turn 15, I believe so. So, yeah. So he's certainly pushing Charles Leclerc. But it's good to see the Ferraris are in this fight. It was a bit of a fear that we might have Red Bulls fighting each other. But that is really hotly poised right now. Those four separated by just under 0.2 of a second. Blink and you will miss it right now. It's certainly looking good. But yeah, it's just how it goes. Yeah, in answer to your question, Brendo, earlier, for McLaren, no, I don't think they're slow, but obviously we saw Zhou Guan Yu, Gasly, Vettel getting a nice toe from somewhere, which obviously bought them at least 4 or 5 tenths of a second on their laps. So McLaren are still in the hunt right now, but at the moment it's really going to be tight in that midfield to go through into Q3. Of course, the top 10 from this session will go through to the pole position shootout. So nobody's really safe with the exception of the 2 Ferraris and the 2 Red Bulls right now, who are, well, let's put it this way. Perez is nearly a second ahead of Gasly in P5. That literally is right now the difference between Red Bull, Ferrari and everyone else. It's literally a different sport right now.
Formula A and Formula B.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Formula 1, Formula 1.5. And it's a bit like Le Mans almost to a degree. We've obviously got the hypercars and you've got the LMP 1s and 2s and GT cars, etc. So, and obviously it'll be quite interesting to see Ferrari, what they do when they enter Le Mans next season. I heard rumours that Ferrari were talking to Fernando Alonso's representatives about being an outside driver. So I heard that from on social media somewhere. I'm not sure if it's a reliable source, but watch that space. I'm not sure if Fernando would fancy going again at Le Mans, although it is a circuit that he's had a lot of success with the Toyota team in the last few years. But
by the way, your Le Mans update, currently Jota are leading from Prima and Penske in the LMP2 class.
There's a crash. Sebastian Vettel's gone into the barriers.
Oh no!
Oh no!
I thought
but
he
should be okay. He should be okay. Well, he's currently P7 at the moment, so technically he's in. He's just reversed out of the barrier over at the slow part just before I think it was turn 14, if I remember rightly. Yeah, just turn 14. Just having a very slow crash. Locked the brakes. Realised, obviously, tried to go for the corner. Managed to slow it down. I'm not sure if the car's damaged. It looks relatively intact, although he probably will have to pit for new tyres at least. So they'll probably put a new front wing on that car. So Seb survives.
Nothing hurt apart from his pride.
Yeah, probably not even that. Crashing into the Tech Pro barriers. Got it right that time. All 4 layers of it. And yeah, it was a very slow crash, as you could see on the replay, Liam. So yeah. Tried to make the corner.
I'm just trying to get. Oh, I just realised I'm still on the Le Mans bet. I need to go back to the F1 coverage.
Yeah, we're not going to do the Le Mans 24 hours coverage. Well, that'd be a fun charity stream, wouldn't it? Although I'm not much of a World Endurance Championship fan.
I'm the exact same, and yeah. I like this comment from the official Y1B. Guys, I'm in a bad place at the moment. Not mentally, just in Luton.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that one now. Yeah, it's funny enough. Yeah, cheers for that one, Yusuf. And now everyone from Luton hates us, so there we go. And but yeah, seeing the 1892 Reds podcast, Liverpool based podcast as well. So if you're a Liverpool FC fan, or you like to hear some interestingly controversial opinion, I know Liam won't agree, being a United fan, but yeah, go check them out. It's quite interesting, some of the stuff that they say. I'm not a Liverpool fan at all, but some of it is quite funny, I must admit.
All I'm gonna say is we're Europa League buddies this year, so
yeah, less said on that one the better, to be honest. I'm not exactly quite healed from that. Checo goes fastest, 141.9. So with the first time in the 141s, Checo's showing some pace all of a sudden.
So currently 1.5 seconds off the lap record from 2000 and I don't know, I think it was 2019 that record happened, which was Bottas. Um, we've had only one red flag so far. I think at this point last year we had 2 or 3. So
yeah, let's not jinx it, Liam. We've got separate plans later on, so we don't want to ruin that. Just watching Charles Leclerc, who was been butchered a little bit by certain F1 journalists for what happened, although he did have a little bit of a snag on the wall there on the entrance to turn 7. He's really pushing purple sector 1.
Yeah.
Going past turn 8, the legendary I am stupid scene where he crashed there a couple of years ago in the Ferrari. And yeah, he's getting quite a lot of poor treatment, I suppose. A few F1 journalists having jokes at his expense. I know we can, but we're not F1 journalists. We're not paid to be impartial, so there we go.
I will be one day though. I swear upon every single saint that there is that I will become an F1 journalist.
And I have
Look
no
at these
doubt.
notes.
You can tell Liam come prepared for this. I said, don't worry, you don't have to prepare too much. He's come and brought a whole book, but then Courtney will test, my co-host, when we first started this podcast. I used to come with a pad of my own and bring notes, but there you go. Charles Leclerc now, yellow in sector 2, purple sector 1, coming over the line. Where's this time going to be? Only P2. But I suppose, Liam, the good news for Ferrari is that Leclerc only lost about half a tenth to Perez in the final sector. So the Ferraris do look quick down the straights, and I think that's going to be critical for tomorrow as well. Just watching the 2 Alfa Romeos come through now as Bottas over the line, 144. Wow.
Yeah.
And Zhou, Guan Yu has had the measure of Bottas all weekend long, and this is amazing. This is, as you said, Bottas has the lap record. He's led this race with more laps led than he's won it. He's led more laps than any other driver. This
would have won in 2018 if you didn't get a puncture.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of Sochi, this is as much a Bottas track as any of them, really.
And Canada as well. He's really strong around Canada too, but he's never really had the luck around there. But yeah, that's another Bottas track.
Got a race control notification. Hamilton driving unnecessarily slowly. I mean, well, that's a burn if I ever saw one. Given where Mercedes are at the moment, that's not what you want to see. Not sure what the team radio is saying. I've seen Norris come over the line now for McLaren, so he's still 10th, 143.3. Riccardo, 143.6, only 13th at the moment. Hamilton will be investigated after the session, driving unnecessarily slowly. So unless he was... I know the drivers have to respect the delta time, and I know there's been a lot of talk about whether people are doing it. I think it was Lewis Hamilton actually mentioning drivers not doing that, and so it would be a little bit ironic if he ends up being penalised for it. So yeah, I saw Charles Leclerc, just a replay as he goes into turn 7 there. The front left tyre, I thought he did clip the wall on the way in there. He did that. Obviously might have affected his sector time a little bit, but managed to avoid that. He certainly is pushing Charles Leclerc right now. So as a replay of Max Verstappen, showing us how it should be done, and then getting very close to the barrier on the exit of turn 7. So yeah, it looks like both of them are pushing a lot right now.
And I like how you brought up earlier on about how around street circuits you need to be inch perfect, and that's where the best drivers separate themselves from the worst. 2 particular drivers come into my head when it comes to street circuits, and that is Ayrton Senna and Keke Rosberg, because both of them were inch perfect drivers when it came to in the race. They were extremely good in the race at being able to lead and not have any incidents, and we don't get that very often nowadays with drivers because of how much wider the cars are compared to what they used to be, and also the limit for the drivers is different because of that.
Yeah, just sort of watching the 2 Mercedes now coming through. There's a yellow in sector 2, so someone's had an off here. We've got Russell and Hamilton on flying laps. Hamilton at the moment not in Q3 at this point, so he needs to improve. Only a 10th up on Norris. George Russell ahead of him has not improved in sector 1 or 2. What's the time going to be for Russell? Does not improve. Does Hamilton improve though? He does. He goes P6 as well. Yellow flag still in sector 2. It seems to be yellow and green right now. So yeah, we've got Sebastian Vettel currently P8 right now. 1.3 off Perez. Can he improve? He does. He splits the Mercedes in P7. Right now, Norris, Ocon, Ricciardo, and the 2 Alfa Romeos right now going out of qualifying. Can Norris get himself through? So goes across the line to start his final flying up. I think that was Ricciardo, actually. So we'll have to wait and see what is going on.
Flags now out, and Alonso. I think Alonso's in danger here. I think he's going to get knocked out. Neither of the Alpines are going to get through here. I don't think. Maybe Gasly might be a little bit at risk. Depends on how much the McLaren and the Alfa Romeos and Tsunoda improve, and also the Mercedes cars as well. I think Alonso's ninth at the moment. He's got about 48 thousandths of a second of a tenth between him and drop zone. So between him and Lando Norris. So I don't think he's safe. I think he's gonna finish.
I think Lando Norris is in trouble. I'm not sure if he's actually on a proper flying lap because he compromised himself getting out of the way of Sebastian Vettel. That was why he went wide at sector 2. So
he set a slightly quicker time than Riccardo.
Yeah, although Riccardo's improved and Norris hasn't, so that's a little bit. You're right. Obviously Norris is in the hunt right now, only 200ths off Tsunoda, who currently sits in P10. So right now, both McLarens going for it. Tsunoda doesn't improve. Neither does Alonso at this point in P9. Ricciardo's only 5 thousandths off Tsunoda going into the final sector. So it's literally all or nothing. Has the McLaren got the grunt to get him through into Q3, and not forgetting his teammate, who's now a fraction of a second, 2 tenths up on Tsunoda after 2 sectors. So Ricciardo right now probably has to beat Alonso and Tsunoda to get through because his teammate is coming rapidly behind him. Ricciardo does not go through. 12 fastest, 1:43.5. What about Norris? Norris looks like he's given up as well. So something's happened there.
So both the McLarens, Ocon, Zhou, and Bottas are out by the look of things.
Yeah. Norris was going very, very slow. Not sure what happened there, if he had a problem or he must have made a mistake. He must have made a mistake in that final sector that we haven't seen. But
must have been just before the S's.
It must have been, because he went through to sector 3. He was 2 tenths up, but we didn't see him. We saw Ricciardo. He must have done a Kimi and gone really wide at that final part of the lap, which has ruined his qualifying. So, as we were saying, guys, so the bottom 5, making up 11 to 15, we've got Norris, Ricciardo, and then we've got Ocon, followed by the 2 Alfa Romeos, Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas. So, disappointing for McLaren on that one, given that we're expecting Ocon to be mighty fast in the race because of his very, very skinny rear wing. And, what are your thoughts on that one, Liam? Were you surprised to see both McLarens out? I was expecting at least one of them to go through.
I'm the same. I was expecting Norris to maybe get through. And by the way, I got the Sebastian Vettel prediction right. I did think he was going to be in the top 10, and what do you know? But yeah, I was expecting Lando Norris to be up there fighting with Gasly for 5th place, but the McLarens have just. I mean, look at the gap though between Norris and Gasly. 2 tenths between Norris and Gasly. That just shows how tight the midfield is. And that shows that, if you can have just a tiny bit more power coming out the corner, that could make the difference between you getting through, having more balls out the corner as well. That could be the difference between you getting through and you not getting through. So maybe it could be the car, or maybe, I mean, he probably would have got through if he didn't make that mistake in the last sector. But I am a bit surprised to see that Norris isn't in Q3.
Well, it's like you said, Liam, and obviously the slipstream would have been very important. Given the situation, you can't expect the McLarens to take turns because there was no time to help each other. But if Ricciardo had got on a toe and it was worth half a second to him on the lap, he'd have been P5, where Gasly is. It literally just shows how tight it is. But yeah, it looks like we weren't seeing too much teamwork in that one. Everyone's sort of getting through on their own merits. But just a recap of the top 10, because obviously we talked about the ones that didn't make it through. We had Sergio Perez going through, fastest of them all. So once again, Red Bull leading the way, looking favourites for pole this afternoon. But Ferrari coming back a little bit at them. We've got Leclerc and Sainz both a 10th off Perez. Max Verstappen another 10th or so off the 2 Ferraris in P4. And then we've got Gasly, Hamilton, Vettel, Russell, Alonso, and Yuki Tsunoda making the top 10. Both AlphaTauris making it through. And just seeing a replay now, the 2 McLarens going very slowly behind Lewis Hamilton, a replay. So this must be the incident they were talking about. But, I'm just looking at it now. Hamilton's literally crawling in that Mercedes. And I can understand if he's driving unnecessarily slowly. But I'll be honest with you, the two McLarens have just parked up right behind him. The only thing I can guess, Liam, what was going on, clearly they wanted a tow off for Hamilton, or Hamilton was waiting for someone to overtake him and get the tow off for them. But this is how it goes. So, yeah, Lewis was going really slow there. So I'll be very surprised. Well, I'd be surprised if the FIA don't at least reprimand him for that, but it might be a bit harsh to warrant a penalty given that he didn't really affect Norris or Ricciardo's laps, because they could have easily overtaken him themselves.
I mean, that was a proper Benny Hill show, that. That was really, really, really messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I could play the music, but the video will get copyrighted, unfortunately. So we'll just have to imagine. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat know what we're talking about when it comes to Benny Hill music. So I know Mark will, so we're good in that regard. But yeah, as I said, really, really tight right now from 5th to 10th, literally 4 tenths separating them. And then, of course, another second after Gasly, we've got the top 4 in Red Bull and Ferraris, and Perez looking the fastest of the 4 so far. So, Liam, I'm going to put the question to you before we get going for Q3 in just a few minutes' time. Who's on pole position this afternoon?
I am going to go with, because he's had a lot of luck in qualifying over the years, I'm going to put Charles Leclerc, just because the leprechauns have been kind to him in the last few years. So I'm going to say he's going to take pole position ahead of, I'm going to switch it around, and I'm going to say Perez second, Verstappen third.
Well, there we go. I'm going to stick with my prediction. I know I was thinking, should I go Perez? He does look good. But no, I'm going to stick with Max Verstappen. Max does tend to turn it up for Q3. So does Leclerc. They do turn it up when it matters most. Will Ferrari play the team game and give both their drivers a slipstream each so that they can guarantee that? Because I'm not sure Red Bull will reciprocate. But I don't know if Ferrari will either, because, you know, it makes more sense for Ferrari to do it, because I feel like Sainz, whilst he might still want to try and be in this championship, I think Ferrari just needs to back Leclerc at this point because of what's happened early in the season. But Red Bull, it's not as straightforward as that for them or their drivers, and I don't feel that either of them would feel compelled. I certainly don't think Max would want to give his teammate a tow, at least not first. If it was going to happen, I think Max would want the first run just to make sure that he gets one. Because it's kind of like when you've got a couple of siblings, you think, oh yeah, he can do it, but you get it as well. You have to share and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure I can see. To be honest, I'm not sure Ferrari will do it either for that. But then, is there an opportunity for perhaps one of the Mercedes to do it, to get higher up, or perhaps one of the AlphaTauri? I mean, to be fair, Liam, we could see that right now. We could see some team orders here between some of the teams in the midfield, because the reward, if they do it and no one else does it and they execute it well enough, is that they may end up on the 3rd row of the grid, minimum.
I mean, that's the slipstream effect around Baku. You know, the slipstream is the number one thing. If you don't get it, then you're basically screwed. It's like when you go to, okay, right, forget about it. Forget about analogies. I'm not David Croft when it comes to that sort of stuff, or Martin Brundle. But yeah, slipstream is very important, and I think that Sainz will have to play the teammate game for Leclerc, because think about it this way. Sainz is, 5th in the championship, and he is 38 points off the championship lead. Now, unless all 3 of them have a disastrous couple of rounds, Perez, Verstappen, and Leclerc, Sainz ain't in the title fight. He's even behind George Russell, who's had a pretty good season for Mercedes. So I think Sainz has got to play the teammate game for Leclerc. With Red Bull, it's different, because both of their drivers are in that title fight. Because if Perez wins the next 2 races, he's in the championship lead. Simple as that. If Sainz won the next 2 races, even then he wouldn't even be ahead of Perez. So unless Perez didn't finish second, which shows that Perez is much closer to Verstappen than Sainz is to Leclerc. So I can imagine Red Bull won't make their drivers, what's the way of putting it? Basically, Red Bull won't make Perez tow Max twice, I don't think. I think we'll do it once a time each.
It'd have to be. I mean, if I just couldn't see a scenario where Perez is now, with a longer term contract, being in the situation he's in the championship, even doing it for once for Max, so seeing Charles Leclerc and Perez having a little bit of a squabble for track position. What's encouraging tomorrow is the fact that the Ferraris are also very good on the straights. It's not just Red Bull destroying them. That the gap between them now is about, 1 or 2 kilometers an hour in the speed traps, whereas at Jeddah, it was as much as 15, which is night and day in Formula One. So with that in mind, even though there's literally 2 temps at the very most separating the 4 of them altogether, it does bode well for tomorrow's race. It really, really does. I think we're going to see, possibly, if we end up in a scenario like this, a genuine on-merit pass from a Ferrari on a Red Bull, because we haven't seen that so far this season, with the exclusion of being on the start, like in the actual race. So we'll have to wait and see. Carlos Sainz now coming down the back straight to start his first flying lap. I can't see his teammate ahead of him, so right now, looks like everyone worrying about themselves.
A massive gap to Sainz, so they're doing their own thing.
The only problem,
with Red Bull, it's the gap's a little. It's a bit. There's a bit of a gap between Perez and Verstappen, but not a heavy one. I think the only team that's really doing the slipstream game is Mercedes, actually, because Hamilton and Russell are quite close to each other on the track at the moment.
Well, I think it makes sense for Mercedes to do that, because if they play the look, if both their drivers play the team game and they get one run at it and they do it right, then you're going to get yourself into a position where you're both going to get a good lap time in, which will be more than enough to get a third row start at this one. So there's definitely every reason to do it, as Sainz does a 35.7, which was about a 10.5 off Charles Leclerc's purple in Q2, as Leclerc goes a bit quicker. Perez is quite close to where Leclerc is on the circuit, so Perez might have got a little bit of a toe off Leclerc. That said, he did not improve on he didn't go purple in Q1, so Leclerc has that at the moment. Interesting to see where Verstappen is at the moment. We can only see the graphic between Sainz, Leclerc and Perez. Perez might
across the line. He's 4 tenths slower than Russell.
Yeah, so Gasly goes fastest right now. Russell goes P2 142.9. We're expecting pole to be at least a second faster than that at the moment. Carlos Sainz goes purple in the middle sector. That's to be expected. What's Leclerc's time in relation to his teammates?
26 milliseconds quicker.
Wow, there you go. I mean, and that's quick maths for you right there. But Sainz really throwing that car about. Perez is a few temps off the Ferraris right now, so he's not had the best lap.
Verstappen's 28 milliseconds quicker than Leclerc in that middle sector.
So Verstappen's on it. Sainz goes 141.8 as expected, a second faster than Gasly. What's Leclerc going to do? He was a couple of temps up. Has he gone fastest?
No, 47 milliseconds behind.
So what about Perez? So Leclerc having a so-so final sector. Perez goes third.
Oh my goodness.
Verstappen.
Disaster. Third and fourth.
Fourth, wow. So Ferrari right now 1 and 2. Carlos Sainz must have had the final sector of his life. Alonso's just gone purple in sector 3.
No, he didn't.
Oh, he didn't.
Verstappen was.
No, it's just come up. It just came up on the graphic that Alonso done a purple 24.8 in sector 3. So yeah, Leclerc must have made a mistake. Well, Sainz obviously had a brilliant sector 3. Oh, that's why Leclerc. Yeah, he did have a big slide on the exit of turn 11, or turn 10, I should say. But he still was 2 temps quicker than his a little bit quicker than his teammate in that time. So, yeah. So at the moment, advantage Ferrari and Carlos Sainz.
Red Bull were quicker than Ferrari in the third sector, but I think Ferrari have got the advantage around in the corners, but Red Bull have got the advantage on the straights. So I wouldn't be surprised if in Sector 1, Red Bull are quicker than Ferrari in Sector 3, but in Sector 2, I think Ferrari have the advantage in the corners. So I think Ferrari could surprise Red Bull here.
Well, after 2 sectors, I think Perez was, a quarter of a second off Charles Leclerc. And they pulled back about a 10.5. So that's kind of the deficit right now. Just looking at a replay of Perez. Where's he made the mistake? Oh, he did hit the wall over at turn 6. So, very aggressive there. So he lost a little bit of time, and then he got very squirmish on the exit of turn 1. That's a nice little slow-mo of Checo Perez there. But, it looks like Red Bull might have a little bit of time left on the table there. Ferrari probably do as well. Watching Sainz's lap, he was a bit loose with the rear end. And so was Leclerc to a degree as well. So there's a little bit more time on the table. But right now, Ferrari locking out the front row. And, this will be the 4th race in a row that they would have done that, which is remarkable. And considering that they haven't won any of those last 3 races. So, yeah, the status quo continues. But 5 minutes to go, guys. Quickly get in the chat now, if you haven't already, who is going to be on pole position? Is it going to be Sainz, Leclerc, Perez, or the world champion, Max Verstappen? Pierre Gasly in P5. As I predicted, he would be in P5 right now. That's probably the only one I've probably got right so far. And yeah, you as well.
Yeah.
You as well, Liam. So George Russell P6, Vettel in 7th for Aston Martin. That's roughly around about where we thought he might be, 7th or 8th. Yeah. Hamilton in P8. So Hamilton still struggling with the car. 4 tenths off his teammate as well, which will obviously annoy him a little bit more. Just seeing a replay of his final run. Lots of porpoising going on. Yeah, he's saying it's bottoming out a dangerous amount. I mean, what do you think on this stuff with porpoising, Liam? Because Lewis likes to stay as low to the car as possible, but it's getting to the point now where drivers' health, long-term health, could be at risk if something is not done about trying to limit the porpoising on these cars. I mean, do the FIA need to get involved?
I think they should, because it's like leather balls with football back in the 60s. Because you're right, this could genuinely, scientists need to do something. Need to have a look at what the effects of this might be, because the amount of back pain that these guys must get, and you can say, oh, they're athletes, they should be used to this, but they aren't used to this, because Formula One cars haven't been porpoising like that for decades. The last time I can remember cars porpoising like that would have been the 80s.
The last time we had ground effect, probably.
I mean, yeah, maybe even 1982 with the ground effect. So the FIA should look into it, because it can be a very dangerous thing. And I've just checked the time. I am hoping and praying that there is not a red flag in sight, because I am tight for time.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, mate. I think if we're going to get a red flag now, it will probably be the end of qualifying. Although there is still a window now, as Perez, the last driver to come out of the pits. So yeah, Alonso, despite having that pace in the final sector, which we were expecting to help him in the race, I think Vettel's just followed Perez out as well. Still 1.8 seconds off the Ferraris and the Red Bulls right now. So Alonso is going to be fun to watch in the race tomorrow. But I mean, I think Alpine will be delighted the fact that he's managed to get into Q3, albeit there was that controversy at turn 15 where he pretty much did a Rosberg at Monaco in terms of getting out the way or pretending to lock up so that to cause a yellow flag. I don't know. It's certainly going to be looked at. Social media's all over it. Conspiracy. Well, I can't remember the last time Alonso did anything like that. Probably Hungary 2007 with that old kerfuffle in the pit lanes with Lewis all them years ago. But there we go. Anyway, we've got Carlos Sainz now coming over the line with just 2 minutes left to go, guys. Quickly get in the chat now. Who is going to be on pole position? You've got 2 minutes before qualifying is up. And it looks like now, Liam, thankfully, if we do get a red flag, fingers crossed we don't, because we want to see these final laps, we should be fine without any further delays. As Sainz goes very loose on the exit of turn 2. Now, as he does his final run, I mean, he's got to be on the limit. You can't leave anything to chance now. And if you're Carlos Sainz, obviously we don't have any rule in place where a driver loses their time. You'd almost feel like he might be compelled a little bit to try and risk it a little bit too much in case he makes a mistake and hits the wall. Not to accuse him of anything.
Maybe he could have a little lock up into turn 8.
He's ruined his lap already. He's about half a second off in the first sector. So Carlos Sainz is not going to improve.
Leclerc with the purple.
Oh, you're ahead of me then at this point, Liam. Obviously, the coverage you've got. Yes. So Charles Leclerc, a 10th up in Sector 1 on his teammate. He's gone purple. Where are the Red Bulls in relation to him? I think Verstappen's just coming through now, although he's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. Verstappen.
Oh, he's a bit slower.
Verstappen's
Alonso with a purple last sector.
Yeah, as I was saying, he was in the first, and he's gone 8th fastest, so he's got ahead of Hamilton with a 1:43.1. But I'm just looking at the mini map. There's the 2 Mercedes and an AlphaTauri ahead of Max, so he may come across traffic if he's not careful. Perez is on his own right now. Leclerc opening up turn 15. See what Leclerc can do in sector 2
as well.
Purple, wow, half a second. Leclerc found 4 tenths on Sainz in sector 2. This guy is on a mission right now, Charles Leclerc. Coming through the final corners, this guy's, well, despite the crashes.
Automatically pole's gone for Sainz.
Yeah, he's surely.
He could get another lap in.
Well, Verstappen is half a second slower than Leclerc in sector 2. What's the time going to be? 1 minute 41.3 for Leclerc. 4.5 tenths faster than Carlos Sainz. It wasn't a purple sector 3. Verstappen is half a second.
Perez is the only one who can beat Leclerc now.
Yeah, it's literally Perez or Leclerc. Verstappen goes P2 though with a purple sector 3. He did get a bit of a toe off of one of Mercedes, but clearly wasn't good enough earlier on.
Perez ain't getting it. Perez ain't getting it.
Worst Perez to Leclerc. He's 3.5 tenths down, Perez, so his best chance.
No one in front of him. He's got no one in front of him. He's got no toe. So
his best chance, yeah. His best chance right now is probably front row. It looks like it's going to be Charles Leclerc again now. What's the time going to be for Sergio Perez now? He's about 5 seconds away from the line now, down the straight.
No, yes, I got my prediction right. I swapped them around, remember.
Yep. So he improved 1:41.6. Charles Leclerc is on pole once again for Ferrari, his 6th pole position of the season. Perez joins him on the front row in P2, Verstappen in P3, Carlos Sainz P4, and George Russell is the man in P5.
No!
Hamilton improved to P7. I'm guessing you had Gasly P5 there, Liam.
I had Gasly P5.
George Russell living up to Mr. Saturday, even though he's more Mr. Sunday this season. Hamilton P7, Tsunoda P8, a great day for AlphaTauri, Sebastian Vettel P9, Fernando Alonso in P10. So just looking at our predictions on that one, mine is completely wrong. I think I've only got Carlos Sainz right. So
I got 4 out of 5.
Yeah, you got 4 out of 5.
I switched Perez before Q3.
Yeah.
So.
See, Courtney got 3 out of 5. Well done, Courtney, on that one. He got Leclerc right, Sainz and Russell. Looking at Carlos Sainz, yeah, he messed his lap up at the beginning. So that's obviously cost him quite a bit because he went from 1st to 4th. It just shows you really got to get it right. So Carlos will not be happy with the 2 Red Bulls sandwiching him and his teammate. But what a lap from Charles Leclerc. That middle sector was unbelievable. Liam, final thoughts on what we've just seen in qualifying. I mean, Leclerc proving to be the maestro on a Saturday right now, but he needs to convert this on a Sunday.
Yeah, you're completely right. The Ferrari has got really, really good qualifying pace, but it's about that race. You know, I think back to Renault in 1982 when they got 8 poles in 16 races, but they only won 4 races, and I think 1 or 2 of them were from pole. And that's similar to Ferrari this season, because Ferrari have had some really, really good qualifying sessions, but they've not had good strategies, or they've had bad reliability, or the drivers have made a mistake, and that's meant that they haven't been able to win most of the races that they've took pole in. And in fact, I think tomorrow will be interesting, because I think we could be seeing Russell fighting for the win. I think maybe, just maybe, because of how dramatic Baku is, we could see anyone in the top 10 potentially getting a good result. Especially the Alpines, because of their flexi wings, I guess you could call them.
Well, yeah, maybe. So Charles Leclerc, as he did last season, on pole position, although he's got much more of a chance of winning the Grand Prix than he did last season in a Ferrari that should have been nowhere near pole, but I digress. But I think the encouraging thing for Ferrari is that in that final sector to Leclerc, he only lost about 700ths or 800ths of a second to the Red Bull. So that Ferrari is still quite rapid in a straight line, which will be brilliant for fans to hear for the race tomorrow, because they don't want the Red Bulls to gazump them in the race tomorrow. So, Liam, before we sign off, what are your thoughts for the race tomorrow? I mean, I know you said George Russell could be in the fight for the win if something crazy happens, but where's your money on tomorrow? Is it going to be Leclerc, one of the Red Bulls, or maybe Carlos Sainz? It looks finely poised right now between Red Bull and Ferrari.
I think that the winner of the Grand Prix tomorrow is going to be Max Verstappen, because he's brilliant in the race, Max Verstappen, and also Red Bull love him, so they'll probably manage to screw up Perez's strategy and get him to win the race. But I digress. I think Verstappen will win ahead of Leclerc and Perez.
Well, I'm going to go with Charles. Yeah, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. I think he's had a lot of bad luck in the last couple of weeks. Monaco was very unfortunate. So was Barcelona. Surely luck has got to pay him back in kind, and he needs the win in this championship fight. I mean, the stats say it all, Liam. 6 pole positions this season. The last 4 races in a row. Truly the qualifying king right now, pulling it out of the bag when it matters most. And You know what? I just absolutely love watching him throw that Ferrari about. I think it's just absolutely something like a marvel. And the fact that he's now got more pole positions than the world champion, yet so many less wins than Max Verstappen, says it all about what Leclerc needs to do. So we'll have to wait and see. But before we sign off once and for all, guys, if you have enjoyed this stream, please consider liking it. It really helps us out a lot. And subscribe to the channel for more great content like this and more great guests on, like Liam, of course. Liam, finally, where can our followers find your channel if they're interested in F1 content from yourself, or even learning from F1's past? Because the historical knowledge that you have is very, very unparalleled on the F1 channel, well, the F1 space as well. So where can our followers find you?
So on Twitter, it is at Talks Motorsports. On Twitter, it is not Twitter. On Instagram, I should say, it's Liam Talks Motorsport YT, and then of course on YouTube, it is Liam Talks Motorsport.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant stuff. And it's been a pleasure having you on as well. We'll definitely have to do it again later on this season. But guys, I hope you enjoyed that stream. We certainly enjoyed it. The headline is Charles Leclerc once again proving to be in the qualifying king of 2022 with his 6th pole of the season. Unlikely as it was, but managed to get ahead of the Red Bulls, who will be starting behind him with Perez and Verstappen in P2 and 3, with Carlos Sainz in P4. And until next time, guys, stay safe, take care, and we will see you in the next DNF